far-right social media influencer Hugo Lennon, also known as Ozpill.
There is a new wave of nationalism in this country, and we're not sorry. We're not sorry for being Australian. We're not sorry for being white, and we're not sorry for being proud of this country.
We don't have to apologise. We step over what exists.
Doesn't that just give you goosebumps? So obviously we just had our third and maybe most symbolic march for Australia. Nationwide, caused the headlines, finally showed up the people who are anti-Australia Day and frankly anti-Australia. The people chanting abolish Australia, burning our flag, who've been able to do that for years, finally were opposed by patriotic Australians. And that leads me to my very first point, which is the numbers. That's what everyone wants to know when you're talking about the recap of our rally was, what were the numbers like? It's kind of hard to get into because everyone does so in really bad faith. You have the media on one hand was trying to claim at one point only 200 people came to Melbourne based off photos that were taken like hours before the rally even happened. Then you have people on the other end of the spectrum who are just like inflating it by 1,000,000,000%.
What's your guess for the numbers? What's your guess for the numbers?
So it's hard to give you an actual figure. However, what I can say is we weren't showed up anywhere across the country by these Invasion Day people. If you look at the Invasion Day crowd in Melbourne and then our crowd, it really isn't that stark. And I think what makes it more impressive is the fact that we only had state condemnation, media condemnation, politicians condemnation of not only the rally itself and Australia Day in general, but like the organisation March for Australia and people involved in it like myself. And I'm not just saying that to excuse the numbers we had. I think the numbers we had were honestly amazing in face of that. I think even a quarter of what we got would be amazing, but obviously we blew that out of the water yet again. We are not professional activists. We're running on our own money. And the other side is basically state endorsed, basically politician endorsed, media endorsed. But I guess the one endorsement they don't have that crucially matters is that of Australians. Because leading into Australia Day, what we knew was that the polling was showing the vast majority of Australians, even young Australians, support not just Australia Day as a concept, but also it on January 26th. And that has been solidly increasing. And so that is definitely like the private majority. Like the majority of Australians support Australia Day, but don't really express that. I guess they don't have an interest in being on the street on a public holiday in the heat when the media and everyone's condemning them. And that's why what we did really matters. And especially given the fact we were able to be on par with these professional activists. Because in the years prior, although the polling shows just recently the vast majority of Australians support Australia Day, in the past they have supported it as well. But if only one side of the debate is visible and loud, they can define themselves as being the normal and the given position. So there's always been that private majority celebrating at home, the boat parties, the barbecues, and all that sort of good stuff. But there's never really been that public cover until the last Australia Day. We sort of were the public vanguard for that group of people who, if they continue those private celebrations, which I obviously totally endorse, but if we only had these private celebrations, and despite being the majority, on a long enough timeline, they were going to take the day away from us. So we had to have a street presence. We had to demand the day stay. Because without that sort of street presence, the media and political elite just say, oh, well, Australia Day is like tolerated, but it's obsolete. And they were taking away the Australia Day parades. They were changing what the Australia Day Council was meant to be representing. They stopped making about a celebration of Australian heritage and culture and more about all the other. The diversity can be celebrated on Australia Day, but not the Australians. So we contested and defended Australia Day, and we did so with fantastic numbers. And so yeah, across the country, we had a fantastic turnout, had some really solid speeches, all hitting what Australia Day is supposed to be about: our heritage, who we are, where we come from, and what we can be. And I touched on my previous video, the defense of Australia Day, why we need it, and why we need it as a defense of our heritage so we can defend ourselves against mass immigration. Because there are a few people online, like this girl, who are trying to argue that you can't celebrate Australia Day and then be anti-mass immigration because Australia Day is like the day that British people immigrated. I'll just let her explain it.
Australia being an anti-immigrant country is so embarrassing because you guys will swear up and down that immigrants are the cause of every problem in this nation. Immigrants are the reason this country is failing. But when January 26 rolls around, you guys are forced to reckon with the fact that you're an immigrant too. Suddenly, everyone on this land is Australian. What do you mean? We're all Australian. No, it's pathetic. Pick one.
I explained in my previous video, as I said, a rebuttal to this, simply stating that Australia Day exists as like an affirmation of Australian identity, and if you don't affirm your identity, some other identity will come and take it over. And the identity which was taking over Australia Day is one of just pluralism, universalist, open borders, and an affirmation of Australia Day in the truest sense of our culture, who we are as a people and where we can be, is necessary to sort of, in the general psyche of our population, give them the strength to want to defend against mass immigration, which is only tolerated under that universalist, pluralist, and everyone's Australian, Australian means nothing, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of what Australia Day represents. And then in the lead up to the day, we had a pretty serious literal terror plot thwarted that was against the Patriots in the Gold Coast, where our organizer in the Gold Coast for the March for Australia had to liaise with police, like anti-terror divisions basically, because there was this university academic who was planning to like throw Molotovs or some bombs into the crowd on Australia Day and cause a riot. But then on the topic of bombs, someone apparently literally threw one into the Perth Invasion Day rally, which was the counter-protest to our Australia Day. So we're not sure what that's about. There's been nothing really come out about it. They haven't really even called it a terrorist attack yet. Obviously, I condemn that, by the way, because some leftists are saying, oh, well, you guys aren't condemning this bombing. Yet we do, obviously. We're doing a peaceful celebration of Australia Day. No one was endorsing going and bombing the Invasion Day rally. In fact, we were consistently condemning the violence, the left-wing violence, for example, of tearing down Anzac monuments and colonial statues in the lead up to Australia Day. I mean, this is just insane. Their rhetoric of abolishing Australia, of burning our flag, which they did again on Australia Day. We are just trying to celebrate our nation. So obviously we condemn any acts of violence, particularly that of someone throwing a bomb into the crowd. Obviously we can condemn that, and also condemn these hate speech laws that were used to arrest a guest speaker in Sydney. At the end of the Sydney March for Australia, they had an open mic, and this gentleman got up and he said some stuff that the police arrested him for, which is crazy because there haven't been any arrests actually for those statue vandals or burning the flag. All the various left-wing attacks we saw on the day, I'll roll some footage here. These left-wing activists were like attacking random patriots, young or old, who happened to be walking back from our Melbourne rally through their crowd going to the train station. They were just attacked. I don't think there was any arrests made there. Meanwhile, in Sydney, and obviously, yes, there's different law enforcement across the state, but the general picture is painted, I guess, across the country now, with the way we've seen two-tier enforcement, that speech, particularly from the right, speech is treated as more dangerous and given a lot less forgiveness than literal explicit violence from the left. Like, just carrying an Australian flag, they will try and grab it off you and then assault you. Where's the condemnation for that? Why is that completely normalized? And so this all takes me to like a really key point here is now that we've sort of won the Australia Day debate. Polling's in our favor. We had a hugely successful national Australia Day that we can't go back to this normalcy we've had. Because obviously in the last few years, they tried the voice referendum. They tried various things to change the date or degrade this country's national identity or change our democracy, all using this weapon of guilt politics of saying, you know, if you celebrate this country, you're a step removed from like genocide or evil. You should be guilty for what white people did on this continent a while ago. We can't actually go back to sort of like having that like good faith discussion, like no, we're not sorry, because imagine what if the French came, imagine we're stepping over that debate, and what we need to go to is a point of like national myth making. Like if we just go back to that middle and sit still and like no, we got our Australia Day, blah blah blah, float it along, they're just going to come back even harder. They're re-gearing for these sort of attacks on our national day and our identity. We can't play this game of compromising it. We have to actually advance now. So we have to take Australia Day even further. It's not going to be this like, oh, let's come together and have unity, because that's not going to happen. The other side is burning our flag, saying abolish Australia, calling for monuments to our people to be taken down at their rally, chanting that. There's no good faith discussion or coming to the table to be had with them. We simply have to get our own side and advance them to a true position whereby the attacks from the other side, the left, mean nothing. Fundamentally, have to accept that conquest was natural and a good thing that has happened in our history. We can't make excuses or apologies for it. Rather, we have to accept that was the reality then as it is now, because we can also be conquered, as many would argue we currently are. And so we obviously had a hugely successful Australia Day across the country. I'm extremely proud of all the patriots who not only just celebrated at home, which is its own very important thing that you do, but those who came out in March, because we weren't shown up. We showed that private majority can be public, and years of this professional activism from the left gets them nowhere, actually. In fact, it's probably just caused more resentment from their side of politics. Like, our position in the South is guaranteed if we're proud to be here in the South of this world. That what we're building here is legitimate, that we're not sorry, that we're aware that it can be taken away from us too, as it was taken away from the Aboriginals. And to avoid that, we must celebrate Australia Day. We must celebrate who we are. We are totally unforgiving. And we're winning, and that is exactly what is happening. But I'm just asking that people continue on the trajectory, that we push and we advance further, because again, complacency, they'll take it back off us. We need to trudge further in the direction of patriotism, such that we're invulnerable to these attacks of burning our flag and trying to guilt trip us. We must move beyond that, outmaneuver them completely. They can be doing their own thing, screaming and yelling. Australians have shown the strength to move against the condemnation of politicians, the media, the academia. We've showed our strength here. Now we must advance. This huge exercise of even having the Australia Day this year, of defending it, of surging in the polls, that will all be for nothing if we go back to the status quo. We must move beyond it, step over the guilt and the sorrow, and advance to a position of unrelenting pride. Thank you guys for tuning into yet another video. Please like and subscribe. It does mean a lot to sort of push my videos further. I am learning and getting the hang of long form content creation for YouTube, and I hope that it is increasing in quality. I hope to bring you a more regular schedule of videos, but for now, thank you, Patriots. Have a good week, good night, good morning, good day, wherever you are. Thank you for watching.